Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. I came across an interesting column on Christianity Today by William Easterly, who is a professor of economics at New York University. This is a fascinating column. I won't take time to go through a lot of it, but he is an economist, and he says, look, ultimately, when you get down to brass tacks, poverty is not an economic problem. It is a moral problem. And part of it has to do with the way in which we view the poor. And his point is there are some moral deficiencies in the way we view the humanity of people that are poor. And he's got a brand new book out called The Tyranny of Experts. And he says, look, you have to recognize and this is a guy at New York University. Now, this is not a guy that's part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. He's like, when you talk about the issue of poverty, you have got to recognize the moral element. And he admits in this interview with Christianity Today, CT, that as an economist, to include such a strong moral dimension is a bit unusual. I start the book making it clear that the idea we can have a purely technical approach to resolving the problems of poverty without any moral implications is an illusion. This is very, very important because when liberals talk about poverty, all they talk about are purely technical approaches. Another government program, higher taxes, more involuntary transfer of wealth. It's all technical stuff. And what this economist at New York University says, you cannot solve the problem of poverty. You can't even address the problem of poverty in a holistic fashion without dealing with the moral component. And he said this, I realized, and he's been working on this issue for years as an economist, I realized our attitude towards the poor is so often condescending and paternalistic. We think of them as helpless individuals. We don't respect their dignity as individuals. And so he says, look, you're not going to be able to solve the problem of poverty unless you recognize the inherent dignity and the capacity of the people that you're trying to help. They have far more ability to assume responsibility for their own lives than you're willing to grant them. They're not helpless. They have the capacity to make good choices, to make life-affirming choices. They have the capacity, unless they've been severely disabled in some way, they've got the capacity to provide for themselves and for the people that are dependent upon them. So I thought that was a pretty profound argument from somebody who is an economist. Now let's grab a couple of sound bites here on the healthcare issue. I want to drop down. Let me see, Rob, or I want to drop down to for a couple more health bites. Let's go drop down to clip number 19, which is the David Plouffe, and I think we'll do the Robert Gibbs clip number 20 right behind that, and probably 21 and 22 right after that. But, you know, the President Obama saying the debate is over. This is a glorious victory. We have won this battle. The debate is over. Obamacare is here to stay. And yet, I'm looking at a piece from Newsmax. Here's the heading, Vulnerable Democrats Still Afraid of Obamacare. This is after the victory dance yesterday. Democrats endangered in the midterm elections continue to distance themselves from Obamacare as President Barack Obama celebrates hitting the 7 million sign-up mark by the March deadline. Politico, again, this is a left-wing political website in D.C., Politico reported that it had attempted to contact half a dozen embattled incumbents. Remember, there's about 15 or 16 Democratic senators that are vulnerable. They could lose, any one of them could lose their seats in November. So Politico says we're going to contact a half a dozen of these guys to get a reaction to the new enrollment numbers, and they failed to return calls. The Politico website noted that Democratic senators in red and purple states were not toasting or touting the figures either. One Democratic pollster who wished to remain anonymous told Politico, quote, the less we're talking about Obamacare, the better off we are. You know, and it's still true that the administration will not reveal, I mean, they're using that 7.1 million number, But notice what they're not telling you. They're not telling us how many people paid for their policies. They're not telling us how many people signed up for Medicaid who were not eligible for Medicaid before. They have not told us how many people have signed up for Obamacare who did not have coverage before. You know, and AP's got a story out today. They're already backpedaling on this deal, already trying to soften the thing. They have a kind of a Q&A piece. How many people have gotten coverage, asks Associated Press. They answer their own question. That's the big question, and the answer is a moving target. So AP is saying, look, nobody really knows how many people have gotten coverage. Here's another question. Do these numbers meet government expectations? Answer, it depends on which expectations. So AP already starting to create some distance and raise some questions about how successful this Obamacare rollout has been. Now, there's a RAND Corporation, R-A-N-D, like Rand Paul, completely different, but spelled the same, pronounced the same. They're a high-powered research firm, very credible outfit, and they have done a study on the number of people, the number of uninsured people who have signed up for Obamacare. Now, the LA Times found it. Apparently, nobody else has seen it. It's unpublished, but the LA Times got their hands on it. And this RAND Corporation research indicates that only 23% of the new enrollees had no insurance before signing up. So you look at the 7.1 million, what RAND is saying, at the most, 23% of those, that's less than a quarter, 23% of those people had no insurance before they signed up. And what RAND found out, of those newly insured Americans, only 53% have actually paid their first month's premiums, which means only half of the people that signed up for insurance have actually paid their premiums and are actually covered, actually have insurance through Obamacare. So if these numbers hold, according to RAND Corporation, the actual net gain of paid policies among Americans who lacked medical insurance in the pre-Obama days would be 858,298. So the number of people that have insurance today that didn't have it before we completely trashed and shredded our entire healthcare system, less than 1 million people. So the Obama administration and the Democratic hacks like Dick Durbin, they're out there talking about 7.1 million, like it's the second coming. The age to come has arrived. The kingdom of God has come from heaven to earth. The reality is the number of newly insured that didn't have insurance before, 858,298. So the point of this is do not let them lie to you. Now, clip number 19, we talked about the special election in the 13th district in Florida. David Jolly upset win over Alex Sink, high-profile Democrat. And I've had this soundbite in the queue for a week or two because this was part of the Monday morning quarterbacking over that election in Florida. And here's because the issue in that election was Obamacare. It was Obamacare and it was amnesty. And even though David Plouffe denies that was about Obamacare, that's exactly what it was about. And he says, look, there's something the Democrats need to pay attention to here in this election.
I don't think this is an Obamacare problem. Doesn't necessarily have to be Harvard. We have a turnout issue. And I think that this is a screaming siren that the same problems that afflicted us in 10, and traditionally we've had tougher off years than presidential years, that could face us again. So if Alex Sinks actually did about as well as the president did, I think, with typical swing voters.
Okay, so David Plouffe says, look, or David Fluff, as others have suggested, said, look, this defeat for Alex Sink, this is a screaming siren. This is a wake-up call. And that election, don't let anybody fool you, that election was about Obamacare. That's the main thing that David Jolly campaigned on, his opposition, his resistance, his hostility to Obamacare. Now, here is Robert Gibbs, clip 20. And this guy was a former spokesman. He was the Jay Carney before there was Jay Carney. And he was saying, look, electorally, again, this has been in the queue for a little while, but he's saying, look, things do not look good for the Democrats looking ahead to November.
Doesn't get more involved in, again, raising money and making this a choice, as Dan Pfeiffer said. You lose the Senate, and if you lose the Senate, turn out the lights because the party's over.
Is the Senate in danger?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How come Dan Pfeiffer didn't say that?
Because I did the same thing a few years ago on your show,
Right.
and I still have tire tracks from Nancy Pelosi.
It was
from
not
saying
being so happy
that I
with
thought
you.
that
Yeah.
honesty, you can only go so far in Washington when you're employed. So as a consultant, I can say all these things now, but there's no doubt. I mean, and if you look at, they've got to pick up 6 seats, which is not a small number, but what gives them a huge advantage, obviously, is the states that they're in. As Israel mentioned, in Louisiana and in North Carolina, in Montana, places that the president didn't do well.
So that's Robert Gibbs saying, is the Senate in danger? Absolutely. Well, how come Dan Pfeiffer did admit it? Because he's paid not to admit those things, paid not to tell the truth. Let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Tom in Dallas, Texas. If we can grab Tom. Dallas, welcome. What's on your mind, Tom?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for my call.
Yeah.
I hear all these millions of people that have Obamacare. Let me ask you a question. Say I had regular insurance. I was one of those people who got a notice that I no longer can buy my policy. So I got and buy Blue Cross and get the Obamacare policy. Can I go anywhere I want to? Say I'm excited. I've got my policy after being on the computer for 3 days, and I fall and hurt my ankle, go to the ER, and it's broken. And they say, go see an orthopedic doctor. Can I go wherever I want to? Can I go to any doctor? Can I go to the doctor I've seen before? What do I do?
Is this with Obamacare?
With Obamacare. I've got Obamacare. I had my other insurance before, but now I lost
Yeah.
it.
Well, you know, and here's part of the problem, Tom. Nobody really knows what the answer to that question is.
Well, I do. I'm
Okay.
a provider here in Dallas.
All right, so what's the answer to that question?
Mr. Mackey, you know how many orthopedic doctors there are in Dallas?
Okay, how many?
How many? 600.
Yeah, okay.
How many take Obamacare? Take a guess. How many think take Obamacare?
Wow, I have no idea. I'm guessing that's a lot less than 600.
7.
7. So you're
Seven.
telling me, Tom, you're telling me 7 orthopods in Dallas out of 600 will actually take a...
Go on the Blue Cross Blue Shield website in Texas. Pull
Wow.
up all the orthopedic. Go there. You can scroll through and get to the orthopedic doctors. Then you pull up the Obamacare portion of Blue Cross, which is Advantage. There are 7 doctors in the city of Dallas. And you know why that is?
Why is that?
Well, let me ask you a question. Say you sell hamburgers, and it costs you $1 to make that hamburger. And so you...
Hey, Tom,
Yeah,
let me ask, can you hang on for just 2 more minutes?
sure.
Okay, I want to continue this conversation after the break because this is fascinating stuff. Talking with Tom in Dallas, Texas about the number of specialists you can see under your Obamacare policy. Be right back. Focal Point in the AFR Talk.